Tonight, we have stories lined up just for you. But before we dive in, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on our stories. So, dim the lights, get cozy, and let's get lost in tonight's tale. I never should have gone camping alone in the remote woods. At first, it seemed like the perfect escape from the chaos of city life. A chance to find some peace and solitude, they said. Little did I know that the woods held secrets darker than my wildest nightmares. I arrived at the campsite just before nightfall. The forest was eerily silent, the only sound being the soft rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. I set up my tent and started a small campfire, the flames flickering in the encroaching darkness. I tried to shake off the unease, settling in my gut, as I roasted marshmallows over the fire. As the night deepened, I noticed something peculiar. The woods were devoid of the usual sounds of nocturnal creatures. No chirping crickets, no hooting owls, just an oppressive silence that seemed to press against my ears. The forest felt watchful, as though it held its breath, waiting for something. I crawled into my sleeping bag, zipping it up to my chin, trying to convince myself that it was all in my head. But then I heard it, the faintest whisper, like the breeze rustling through leaves. It was almost unintelligible, but it sounded like a name. My name. Sarah, it called, soft and insistent. My heart raced. I sat up, scanning the darkness around me. There was no one there. I chalked it up to exhaustion and tried to sleep, but the whispers persisted. Sarah, Sarah. Each time the voice grew louder, closer, as if someone were right outside my tent. Panic set in, and I grabbed my flashlight, unzipping the tent and shining it into the woods. There was nothing, just trees and shadows. Doubting my own sanity, I decided to hike back to my car and abandon the camping trip. But as I packed my things, the whispers grew frantic, almost pleading. They echoed through the trees, surrounding me. I felt like I was being watched, not by one entity, but by countless unseen eyes. As I stumbled through the dark woods, the trees seemed to close in around me, their branches reaching out like gnarled fingers. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being herded deeper into the forest. My flashlight flickered, and I was plunged into darkness. That's when I heard footsteps. Soft, deliberate footsteps approaching me from all sides. I froze, my heart pounding. I called out, "Who's there?" but received no response, only the ceaseless whispers like a chant that grew louder with each passing second. Sarah, Sarah, Sarah. Tears welled up in my eyes as I spun in place, unable to see anything beyond the oppressive blackness. Panic consumed me, and I started to run, stumbling over tree roots and rocks. The footsteps pursued me, closing in with each passing moment. I lost all sense of time and direction, the forest becoming an inescapable labyrinth of darkness and despair. And then, just as suddenly as it had all begun, it stopped. The whispers ceased. The footsteps faded, and I found myself alone in the woods, gasping for breath. Exhausted and disoriented, I collapsed against a tree, my mind racing with fear and confusion. I had no idea where I was or how to get back to my campsite, let alone my car. The forest had swallowed me whole, and I was at its mercy. Hours passed as I stumbled through the woods, trying to retrace my steps. But the forest seemed to shift and change, its familiar landmarks eluding me. I was lost, and the darkness closed in around me like a vice. Just when I thought I couldn't go on, I saw a faint glimmer of light in the distance. Hope surged within me as I stumbled toward it. But as I drew closer, The light revealed a horrifying sight. A circle of hooded figures, their faces obscured, standing in a clearing. The whispers returned, louder and more chilling than ever, their voices mingling with the chant of the hooded figures. I froze, unable to tear my eyes away from the haunting scene before me. It was as though I had stumbled upon some ancient, malevolent ritual, and I was the unwitting intruder. "Sarah, join us," they intoned in unison. Terror gripped me, and I turned and fled, running blindly through the forest, not caring where I was going, only desperate to escape the nightmarish scene behind me. The whispers pursued me, their voices growing more frenzied, as though they were hungry, and I was their prey. I ran until I could run no more, collapsing at the edge of a river. The voices and the footsteps had finally fallen silent. Dawn was breaking, casting a pale gray light over the forest. I was battered and bruised, but I had escaped. I stumbled upon a nearby road and was eventually picked up by a passing motorist, who called the authorities. When they found my campsite, they discovered it had been ransacked, as if a horde had torn through it. To this day, I can't explain what happened in those woods. I've tried to convince myself that it was all a hallucination, a fever dream, brought on by exhaustion and fear. But the whispers still haunt my dreams, and I can't shake the feeling that the forest is still out there, waiting, watching, and calling my name. It was a cold, moonless night when I first heard the whispers. I had just moved into a charming old house on the outskirts of town, seeking solitude and inspiration for my writing. The real estate agent had mentioned nothing about any strange occurrences. But as I settled in, I realized there was more to this place than met the eye. The house itself was a relic of another time, with creaking wooden floors, dusty old portraits hanging on the walls, and a fireplace that crackled with eerie life. It felt as though the walls held secrets, and the longer I stayed, the more I sensed a presence, an uninvited guest in my new home. The whispers began softly, barely audible at first. I dismissed them as the wind playing tricks on my mind. But they persisted, growing louder and more insistent with each passing night. It was as though the very walls were speaking to me, their voices carrying a chilling, otherworldly cadence. I tried to ignore them, focusing on my writing during the day, but as soon as night fell, the whispers returned, tormenting my thoughts. Sleep became a distant memory, and my once productive days turned into bleary, caffeine-fueled marathons. One night, unable to bear it any longer, I decided to confront the source of the whispers. Armed with a flashlight and trembling with fear, I descended into the basement. The air grew colder with every step, and the shadows seemed to come alive, dancing on the walls. My heart pounded in my chest as I reached the basement's heavy wooden door. As I swung it open, a gust of frigid air rushed out, extinguishing my flashlight. I was plunged into darkness, surrounded by the haunting whispers. Panic welled up inside me, but I steeled my resolve and fumbled for my phone's flashlight. The dim glow revealed an old, dusty room, filled with antique furniture and forgotten relics. In the center of the room stood an ornate mirror, its surface covered in grime. It seemed ordinary enough, but as I approached, the whispers grew louder, and the mirror's reflection began to distort, revealing grotesque, shifting shapes. Fear clutched at my chest, but something compelled me to step closer. I reached out and touched the mirror's surface. It was ice, cold, and a shock of pain shot through my hand. With a gasp, I pulled back, but it was too late. My reflection remained distorted, a grotesque caricature of myself, contorted in agony. The whispers reached a fevered pitch, and I felt a presence behind me, cold fingers grazing my shoulder. I spun around, my heart pounding. But there was nothing there. The room had grown darker, and the mirror seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. In a panic, I stumbled back, tripping over an old chair and crashing to the floor. The mirror shattered with an ear-piercing shriek, and as the shards fell around me, I saw something in them, something that sent shivers down my spine. Faces, twisted and contorted in agony, stared back at me from the broken glass. Terrified, I scrambled to my feet and fled the basement, leaving the shattered mirror and the haunting whispers behind. But the horror did not end there. The whispers followed me, invading my every waking moment. I could no longer distinguish between reality and nightmare, and I knew I had to leave that cursed house. With great effort, I packed my belongings and left that place behind, never looking back. The whispers still haunt me, though, echoing in my mind like a relentless, tormenting chorus. I may have escaped the house, but I fear that I will never escape the horror that lurks within those shattered fragments of the mirror, forever etched in my memory.